What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Alarm's FA Sports Talk. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me today, Jon Impemba. And a very special episode for you as we're going to be doing these live streams at 3 p.m. Throughout the week, all as pre-shows for the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, the FSGA. All of their drafts that they're doing throughout the week. Yesterday was the FSGA Champions League. Today is the American Conference. That starts up at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can catch the live stream right here on Fantasy Alarm's Facebook. You can carry it on our Twitter feed, and, of course, on our YouTube channel as well. So please be sure to subscribe, and you'll be able to catch all the draft action. Tomorrow is actually a very special one. They're doing a futures and props bet draft that Adam Ronis and I are going to be co-partnering the Fantasy Alarm team for that one. And then on Thursday and Friday, we've got the the National Conference and then the Central Conference. So Fantasy Alarm, 3 p.m. this entire week, we're going to be doing preview shows. So we're going to kind of look at last night's draft, see how that went, and then we're going to take a look at what we think might happen in tonight's action. Jon, you were on the show Alarm After Hours with Fensty last night.
Yep.
You guys did a whole mess of breakdown. I came in to visit for a little bit. Give me your overall thoughts of last night, and then we'll kind of see what may or may not happen in tonight's draft.
I mean, I think what we saw last night is what we've all gotten a sense of, and that is that running back depth goes quick here. So we saw a lot of teams either go running back heavy or maybe think that they could get some running back depth in later rounds, and they ended up sort of holding the bag there with some questionable running backs as potential starters or rough depth options that they had to go ahead and stack their team. I think those who watched last night's draft maybe have to adjust some of their strategy for today's draft and hit those running backs a little bit harder and just understand, like we've been saying almost since day one, at least here at Fantasy Alarm, the wide receiver depth is where the strength of this draft is going to be. So get your running backs early and go forward for that from there.
Yeah, one of the things that I was looking at, and this is really kind of funny because in yesterday's draft it was 11 out of it's a 14-team draft, so 11 running backs in the first round, 8 running backs in the second round, 7 running backs in the third round, and then 3 in round 4. You get to a certain part of the draft where you just kind of look at it and you say, man, running backs are flying off the board left and right, but at what point do you take advantage of that wide receiver depth and value that you're getting, as opposed to just continuously taking running backs? Like, I'm just looking at yesterday's draft board, and you guys can find that rtsports.com/FSGA-champions. When you see A.J. Brown and Amari Cooper and Calvin Ridley, even these guys going in the early 4th round, because you're sitting there and you're like, well, these guys are all left on the board here. Somebody has to take them because everybody's been going after, all those other running backs real early. Like we saw Singletary go in the second round, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Chris Carson. Like, at what point, Jon, do you sit there and you say, listen, I got to hit that value at the wide receiver because it's definitely a bigger value to have that guy as opposed to taking a substandard running back?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a little bit sense. Obviously, this is a 14-team draft, so like the depth is going to go a little bit quicker than I think most of the people, they play in their home leagues are 10, 12 teams, so they're not used to seeing, like you mentioned, David Johnson in round 2. I saw some people on Twitter commenting, being, oh, what a reach there. I'm like, well, not really. Like, if you think about it, he's normally a 3rd or 4th round ADP, 14-team league. You've taken really at the end of the second. Like, that makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, to bump him up a little bit. But you said some of these receivers fell. I really liked what the NFFC team did, or Greg Ambrosius, Allen Robinson, Juju Smith-Schuster at the end of round 3, getting a round 4. You talk about, 2 receivers that fell because everybody's going wide receiver heavy. I mean, that's great value that they're getting there in those positions. So in a sense, I certainly think it makes sense to take advantage if you see a receiver that falls, but you also don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're looking at your running backs and a guy like Keyshawn Vaughn is your RB2. Like we saw, with with Ray's team. Like to me, that's a risk. Yeah, we know there's some potential upside there in PPR formats like that is with Tampa Bay. But attacking wide receiver earlier and not going after the running backs now has him maybe in a little bit of a tough spot in a league where you can't make trades. So he really has to hope for those guys to come through for him, or he's in a tough area.
It is, yeah, it's a definite tough spot. And I mean, listen, that was kind of, what I was looking at. When I took DeAndre Hopkins in the first round, he was ninth overall. I mean, I kind of expected that part, and I said this to you last night on the show. I expected it to be making that decision. It wasn't a particularly favorable draft spot. And so I knew Michael Thomas wasn't going to fall to me. DeAndre Hopkins, I had number 2 on my board, but I mean, to me, there was definitely, I didn't think I was taking as big a risk taking Hopkins as I did. I mean, Aaron Jones came off afterwards. I was surprised, though. Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, those guys all came off in between my first and my second pick. And I expected to see Devontae Adams go off, which I figured we would see. Nick Chubb, I figured we would see. Aaron Jones, I figured we would see. But instead of guys like Edwards-Helaire and Eckler and Drake and even Josh Jacobs, I thought we were going to see Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, and those guys, possibly Travis Kelce, come off the board at that point there. So when those running backs started going, dude, I was like, I got nervous, which is why I hammered it.
Yeah, we always say you don't want to be caught at the wrong end of a run, right? Like you want to start the run and not be the one to finish the run. And again, like you said, they kind of got caught there. I was surprised to see Chris Godwin, go as the first pick in that second round there. I figured he may have gone running back there as well. But I understand where you're coming from, thinking maybe some of those other RBs were going to fall back to you. And then it puts you in a situation now where, you have the great wide receiver 1 for sure. Hopkins has a chance to be the number 1 overall guy. And then you had to go 3 straight running backs there because there wasn't going to be any running backs left if you didn't go in that direction. It just the way the draft plays out. And again, I think people will see this draft board tonight and react that way. I think you'll probably see a lot more back-to-back running back picks. Maybe you'll see these wide receivers start falling more into the later second round, more into the third round, while teams load up on those RBs.
It should be very interesting to see whether or not we see those reaches again. Like when you're sitting there, and I mean, we've got a great group of guys coming up for this next one. I mean, just to name a couple of them here, who I know personally: Seth Trackman, Scott Swaine, Chris Towers, and Ben Gretsch from CBS Sports, Joe Nazaro and Mike Graben from Yahoo. Derek Carty is actually going to be hanging on, drafting for EV Analytics tonight. So, when I look at that, I mean, I wonder, are these guys going to look at last night's draft board and say, oh, all right, well, this is how I have to set my strategy up? Are we going to see the reaches on the Singletaries, the Gurleys, the David Johnsons, like we have seen? Or do you think, possibly that back end of that draft, they start hitting that wide receiver talent? That's definitely going to be a very telling thing for me. Now, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, we see that second and third round for those guys. When it got down to me, it was kind of funny because I was definitely eyeballing Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, and the as the draft was going on, Chris List took Kyler Murray at the tail end of that. For me, the question was, do I take one of these wide receivers who, all right, I mean, I like Marvin Jones. I like Jerry Jeudy. I like Darius Slade. Is it more important for me to go ahead and take that upper echelon QB in Dak Prescott and hopefully maybe start a QB run a little bit there, or at least secure that instead of getting a wide receiver who I'm not enamored with, knowing that I love the mid tiers of wide receivers? Is that a move that you would have gone with there where I grabbed Dak?
So I've targeted Prescott in a lot of the best balls that we've done in rounds like 5, 6, 7, kind of in that area. So it's definitely a strategy that I'm okay with doing. You're getting a potential top 3 overall QB play. Dak was number 2 overall quarterback last year. Granted, it took a Mahomes injury for him to really leapfrog. What I did find a little bit funny about the way that quarterback run happened in round 5 and 6 is actually yesterday's fantasy alarm poll was if you weren't drafting Jackson and Mahomes, which of the next quarterbacks are the ones you're targeting? It was Murray, Prescott, Wilson, and Watson. Ironically, those are the 4 that went right in the next round. FA Nation, who voted on the poll, had Russell Wilson actually as their top QB of the group. I voted for Prescott in that, so I'm a big Prescott guy believer in Dallas. I'm unsure if I would have gone a quarterback, though, given the way sort of the depth was playing out again. I feel like knowing that it seemed like a lot of people were waiting on quarterbacks, I would have likely tried to waited around, waited for someone else maybe to start picking off a quarterback and kind of filled out where I was at the rest of the position. Like, you start 3 wide receivers in this league. Marquise Brown, we talked about on the Fantasy Slam After Hours show last night. I'm not like the biggest fan given the offense is so run centric, and I'm also expecting a little bit of regression from Lamar Jackson this year in terms of passing. I probably would have tried to hammer another wide receiver at that position, and maybe seeing if Prescott would have fallen another round there. If not, I would have been okay with a Matt Ryan, Josh Allen, someone taken in the rounds after that. But I don't hate it because, like you said, that points that he scores can help offset some of the other depth that you have who maybe not have a high of a ceiling,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can definitely see that. So who would you have taken? Like, instead of Dak Prescott there, would you have taken Tyler Boyd, Will Fuller, Judy, Cooks, Marvin
Yeah.
Jones?
So my guy is unfortunately he was already off the board. Would have been Gallup had he been there. Obviously he's gone. I probably would have taken a look at Brandon Cooks. Again, I like the fact that he is going into that Houston offense. As long as he stays healthy, and I know that's a big if for a guy that has a concussion history that he does. I mean, he's been a 1,000-yard receiver multiple times. He's a guy that stretches the field. Watson's going to be throwing the ball downfield a lot. We know Will Fuller's injury history is worse than Cooks' injury history. So Fuller ends up going down. It leaves Cooks more as the go-to receiver there. So if I was taking shots, and I know you like sort of the home run threat there with Marquise Brown, like that's Brandon Cooks, right? I probably would have gone in that direction, knowing that there's a chance he's at least maybe the number 1 receiver going into Houston this season. So I probably would have ended up in that direction. But I like Tyler Boyd. I do think Joe Burrow's going to throw a lot this season. I think, they have the weapons around him. He's coming off that monster year in college. Obviously a different game, but I can't imagine Boyd all of a sudden is just going to have this huge regression. The unknown about AJ Green there as well. So yeah, Boyd or Cooks, probably would have gone Cooks first in that area.
Interesting. Well, you're wrong, John. The correct answer was Dak Prescott.
Hey, you know what? Again, I have a lot of ownership of Dak, so I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like it. But again, I just looking at the depth of the team and the draft, the way it was going, I feel like especially since a lot of people waited on quarterback and you don't have the foresight to know that's what's going to happen. Hindsight, I can sit here on Monday morning quarterback the team and be like, I would have waited, Howard. I would have taken a position player.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, when you're looking at it the day after, it always looks better. You always have better ideas coming through. And it was kind of funny, when you look at the way the quarterback situation went, there were definitely Murray went there at the end of the 5th, and then I took Dak in the 6th. Russell Wilson went right after me. Deshaun Watson later in that round. Then in the 7th, it was Breeze, and then you didn't see anything come off until the early 8th with Matt Ryan, then Josh Allen. So are today's American Conference participants, are we going to see a very similar situation where we see more teams waiting on quarterbacks? Nando DeFino, look at that. He didn't touch a quarterback until round 14 when he settled in on Minshew. The Sports Illustrated guys took Ben Roethlisberger as their QB in round 12. He was the first guy they took. I think those are the latest QBs taken in this draft, part and parcel why I took Baker Mayfield, because I was like, I'm not just going to leave that for you. That's not right.
Play a little defense on the draft board there.
And what does that do to Jen Piacenti too when win the league with Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, if you win the league because you're starting Baker over Dak, I mean, congrats. That's and hey, you know what? It happens. A lot of people took Lamar Jackson last year in rounds 13, and then they won the league because of him. So, post hype Baker after him being like a 5th-round pick ADP last year that I certainly didn't believe in. But yeah, I mean, I think you could see more people wait on quarterbacks. Again, it will depend on how the draft goes, obviously, team by team. But if the trend is to wait on a quarterback, I don't see a reason why you'd want to bite too early when you can get some depth. What's your take in round 8 when 3 Jets wide receivers went off the board in a row?
Right.
Perriman, Crowder, and Mims. Who do you think actually ends up? You took Perriman obviously to start the run. Do you think he's able to carry over that success here?
I do think that he can carry over that success. What I look at with Brashad Perriman, I think what needs to happen is I think Sam Darnold needs to stop leaning as heavily on Jamison Crowder as a security blanket. And I think that with Crowder's injuries last year, we did see some of that, and we saw more from Robbie Anderson in connection with him. So I think Brashad Perriman definitely has that. I think I like him better than I like Robbie Anderson. And I think that he's got that ability not just to stretch the field, but he can make some of those tough catches to help move the chains. So I think, it'll get spread around a lot, but I see Perriman having the bigger target share over Crowder. And listen, I love Mims, but he's still very, very raw and not having training camp right now, which is why that article in the NFL Draft Guide from Justin Vreeland, that training camp matters. I think that's so important at this stage of the game, given what we're going through right now, that these rookies not having any time to go up against NFL competition in training camp could hinder some of the growth.
Yep. I definitely agree with you there. Now, was Perriman someone you were targeting in round 8? Because I know you only had 2 receivers up to that point, so I'm sure you were hunting for receivers. Do you feel the same way about Justin Jefferson as a rookie, with the lack of training camp and everything like that? Do you feel that Jefferson's just more of a polished receiver, and had he been there, would he be somebody that you would have taken over Perriman?
I'm gonna admit something here to you that I really shouldn't, and
Was it Julian Edelman?
I feel kind of dirty saying it, but Julian Edelman was my target there with that pick, and he went to Mark Zwillinger a couple of picks right before me. I was like, oh, so close. Because I knew between Dak Prescott as my quarterback and Julian Edelman as a wide receiver of mine that I know that you and Jim Bowden would just shut up and nobody would ever say anything bad about my team. You guys would be like, wow, that is the greatest team in the world, Howard.
Listen, I think in the 8th round, I wrote about this too, the 8th round of Julian Edelman right now for his ADP is like disrespect. If you're looking at the players that are going around the same level, I mean, the guy has averaged almost 100 catches and 1,100 yards the last 3 years. Yeah, he's been a little bit injured, but I mean, everybody's talking about how bad Tom Brady's been. It's like, all right, well, if Tom Brady was so bad, Jarrett Stidham can't be much worse than what Brady supposedly has been. And if anything, he's in a younger arm. He's likely more willing to make some plays that maybe Brady wouldn't have gone to. And he's going to lean heavily on Edelman, in my opinion here. So the fact that you could potentially get a 100-catch, 1,000-yard guy in round 8 because there's some like narrative behind the Patriots offense this year is funny to me. Plus, I mean, I've seen all the workout videos. I live outside of Boston. For those who aren't paying attention, big Patriots fan here.
And wait, what? You're a Patriots fan.
Edelman's already working with Stidham. They're getting these practices together. They're Instagramming one another. Like, oh man, gotta buy that 8th round value, man. It's crazy the disrespect that he's getting right now. So I would have loved to see him on your team. Even on Alarm After Hours last night, Fency's telling me he doesn't like Edelman, telling him he's nuts. So if you can get Edelman in round 8, go for it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And that was my target. I laughed when he came off the board. And then, listen, the question was who was I going to get at that spot? And I'll take, and I've talked about this. I actually talked about this morning on SiriusXM Fantasy Football with Mike Dempsey and Paul Kelly. I will take a veteran free agent over a rookie simply given the situation right now, simply because the veteran free agent, he's been around, he knows what to expect at the NFL. He knows the speed at which he needs to play. He knows the level that he has to elevate his game to. The rookies, who's keeping up with the program right now? Who's getting a little fat sitting at home, right. Doing this whole virtual thing? Yeah, I'm sure everybody's working out, but I mean, are they really honing their skills to the point that they need to? So Perriman, for me, I was fine when Justin Jefferson came off the board. Perriman, I thought was I might have been able. I think I might have been able to wait another round for Brashad Perriman, just based on what was going on with the rest of the draft. But I wanted to make sure I wanted to lock down him, and I wanted to lock down Anthony Miller, who I took with my next pick,
Yeah.
as two veteran guys who I see getting a nice steady dose of targets this year. So that's where I went there. Let me ask you here about the tight ends, because
Yep.
obviously, I'm the tight end whisperer. Hello.
Yep.
Andrew Cooper taking the baton from me. I'm passing that over to him. He does an amazing job with that. Be on the lookout, by the way, all you people in the Scott Fishbowl. There's an article coming from Andrew Cooper that just specifically just about the Scott Fishbowl and about tight ends and drafting them. It's going to be a mind-blowing article. He and I have been talking about it extensively. We both have the number 2 pick in our respective divisions, so we've been kind of sharing some info with each other.
You guys got to corner the market on the tight ends there.
Well, yeah, I think maybe that's what we're going to end up doing, so that we can co-whisper. Yeah. But here's the funny thing. So you look at the way it all went in the draft last night. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, no brainer there. I personally wouldn't have taken Zach Ertz over Mark Andrews, but nevertheless, that's the way it went. Evan Engram went right before me. I was still keyed in on Dak Prescott. Again, number 3 QB for me versus the number 4 tight end in Darren Waller. Number 5 tight end in Darren Waller. So I figured I could let that go. When I saw Waller go, Hunter Henry go, and then Rob Gronkowski go, I knew I was going to have to make a move. Tight end is deeper than it was before, but is it really that deep?
Right.
And so I made that reach grab of Hayden Hurst. I mean, he's down low in the rankings on the on RT Sports on their default site, but playing up against these people, and by these people I mean industry experts.
What do you mean, you people?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The 2 Utes.
Yeah.
These 2 Utes. I knew I was going to have to, if I was going to make a move at tight end, this was the time to do it. I grabbed Hayden Hurst. And I think that kind of, it sparked Zwillinger to take Tyler Higbee. And then it kind of quieted out a little bit. And then all of a sudden, then you started to see them trickle rounds 9, 10, and 11 for that rest of the tier. What are you curious as to your thoughts on that move there, saying, you know what, now I've got the number 3 QB, and I've got a tight end who I genuinely believe could fall into with the right situation in Atlanta, that he's got top 5, top 7 tight end even, if he gets the work, as opposed to my number 3 wide receiver, or my number 4 wide receiver, or some schlub running back like Matt Breida or Tevin Coleman.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't necessarily hate the Hurst pick. I mean, again, in drafts, I've gone ahead and taken Gronk in round 8 or 9, and these are in 12-team leagues. So 14-team, I'm not surprised to see him go in round 7. But I've also been big on the Mike Gesicki train, and he went in round 10. So, I mean, is there really a 3-round difference, do we think, right now between Hurst and Gesicki? Could you have waited a little bit longer and been able to get that guy who I know that you like? I've seen you take him, and, industry-wise, again, he's getting a lot of inflation. Obviously we're not having to pay, OJ Howard inflation price like we did last year. But, a lot of people are writing articles about Mike Gesicki right now. So the secret's kind of out on him. I know one of the reasons that you like Hurst, you mentioned, the potential getting the red zone work that Hooper had last year, and with that Atlanta offense. But I wonder, what's your take with Gurley there now? I mean, Gurley was a very big red zone back, an effective red zone back for the Rams. We know the running game was a big issue for Atlanta. Do you think that they actually just run the football with Gurley, and maybe that takes away from the red zone targets there from Hurst? Obviously, you drafted Hurst, so I don't know if that's what you believe or not. But that's my one worry there with Hurst, and sort of the belief that he's going to take over all of a sudden for Hooper. The fact that they did add a running back that has taken that role over.
That's what I said. I didn't expect everything from Hooper to just turn over to Hurst. Like 85 to 90% of the workload. I think that would be good, because I agree with you. Yeah, not having Devonta Freeman last year was a big deal, and they ended up turning to the pass a lot more. which is really funny. Have you seen like the prop bet for most passing yards? Like Matt Ryan's like one of the top three
Yeah, I believe it.
recommended there. I think Gurley gets more work, obviously. I think, they're going to try to utilize him similar to what the Rams tried to do
Yeah.
last year and kind of, give him the 12 to 15 touches early on in the season and then try to, use him a little bit more heavily towards the tail end. Again, I sit there and I continuously stress the arthritic knee. And sure, listen, that's fine. Spared him a little bit of wear and tear last year, ran him hard in the second half of the season. What's going to happen as far as training camp goes for him? Is Gurley going to be ready? And what happens if Gurley, if his knee really flares up? So I'll take Hurst as the number 3 target on that team, with or without Gurley there.
Yeah.
I still think he falls in that realm.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Again, my whole thing usually with Gurley was, and I agree, I think they'll probably limit a lot of maybe his early down or early field usage. Like they'll pass the ball to get into the red zone. But we saw last year, and this was an article that I shared or a tweet that I shared with you yesterday, breaking down sort of the running back red zone fantasy points. And of Gurley's 157 fantasy points last year, 88 of them were within the red zone. So basically, all of his production was scoring touchdowns once he got into that red area for the Rams. And when discussing Gurley a lot this year, that's how I sort of figured it as well. Like he may only get 850 yards, but he could get 12 rushing touchdowns, because they're just going to run him a lot in that zone. So again, I don't mind Hurst. I think there's upside there, and obviously the gap is there left for Hooper. But again, I probably would have looked for another receiver. There's not a lot of depth there, but I would have probably gone Edelman maybe there instead of Hurst and solidified my wide receiver 3, since you have to start 3 receivers in this draft, and then look for a tight end. Hurst probably could have even been there around later, right? Like you don't know that, but Higbee, Cook, something like that would have fallen to you as well. So again, not a terrible pick. I think he could be a top 10 tight end, but just looking at the receiver depth that you had at that moment, I may have gone in that direction instead.
I love my receivers, dude. I gotta say, listen, I get that you don't like Marquise Brown because of the way that is, but you know what? He is the number 1 wide receiver on that team.
He was the number 1 receiver technically last year too. He just didn't do anything. Mark Andrews is really the number 1 receiver.
He also got hurt. He missed a couple of games as well.
Yeah, I mean,
taking that into account. Andrews in the red zone was huge. Absolutely. To me, Brown's got more of that home run threat. Brashad Perriman, to me, again, like I said, he's got that home run capability, but I think he's also got the ability to go over the middle. Anthony Miller's another guy who I'm pretty high on. And then Alan Lazard, I guess everybody's just
I asked you about him last night.
Yeah, everybody's sleeping on this dude. Like, do you really believe in Devin Funchess? Should anybody believe in Devin Funchess?
I don't necessarily think you should believe in him, because it's not like he's ever really been this like monster receiver at any point in his career. But he is a very big body, and when they do get in the red zone, if he's healthy enough, he is at least a red zone body that maybe Rodgers will target. Devontae Adams is also just a monster red zone threat in his own right. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure Lazard has already had that connection there with Rodgers, and he'll be fine. Again, he's your wide receiver 5. So if he works out for you, awesome. If not, you let him go, and somebody else will be there for you. So I don't hate that pick. I like Anthony Miller as well. But there are a lot of, and I think you could probably admit this as well, there's a lot of boomer bust in your receiving core here. Sure. After DeAndre Hopkins. So I don't know if any of that played into the fact that you didn't know you couldn't trade until round 12. But we'll see.
What are you doing?
Didn't you write an article called "Know Your League Rules"? Wasn't that an article you wrote?
Right. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I got so caught up in like all the live stream production and stuff like that I neglected to. But you can trade in FSGA baseball. I don't know why all of a sudden you couldn't trade in football.
No, that is interesting. I agree. And you didn't really get any answers to that question either.
No, I got a little.
Maybe I think you got it. Maybe next year, I think is what you got. So,
yeah, exactly. That's all right, man. Like I said, I'm happy not trading in this league. I feel like I've got some nice depth, and it should be good. All right, we got to get out of here because we got, our illustrious producer, Matt Sells, who is working like a champ for this. He's got to get everything set and ready for the FSGA draft. Again, guys, that FSGA draft is coming up on this live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's going from 4 to 7. You can hear the broadcast on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 7 to 10 p.m. But again, you might as well just catch this live stream as we do it. So we're out of here. Big thanks to Matt for producing. For Jon Impemba, I'm Howard Bender. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the FSGA drafts. We'll catch you next time.